When you have so much stuff going on around in your brain, it's really helpful that you have something to actually like manipulate and move around. So then what I do is I just kind of make boxes for them. Like I used to be the type of person that would just leave texts unread. A lot of the things that I would put down on sticky notes were undecideds. I don't get in this spot anymore, the spot of overwhelm. And that's where I want you to get. Guys, look, I'm wearing heels. I just thought you had to know that. Look at this big whiteboard over here. I'm gonna take you through an activity that I do when I'm feeling overwhelmed. This is not something that I do on a regular basis, but this is like finals week, wedding planning. I have 100 quadrant 1 tasks, urgent and important to do. So I don't do this very often, but if you're feeling really overwhelmed, it's really helpful. You shouldn't live in overwhelm. No one should have to live in overwhelm. You know, we go through stuff sometimes, but you shouldn't have to live like that all the time. But when you do get there, this is kind of an exercise that I do. So first off, the first thing I do is, and I use sticky notes, okay, so I'm a teacher, and basically studies have shown that when you can manipulate something, you write on it, you move it around. I mean, first off, it makes it more fun. But second off, it makes it more manageable for your brain. Like when you think about like math can be kind of like sometimes when you have all those symbols, it's like more difficult for people. But when they were in elementary school and they had blocks and things to touch, it makes sense. So that's the same principle that I'm using here, is when you have so much stuff going on around in your brain, it's really helpful that you have something to actually like manipulate and move around. So the first thing I would do is I would just write down anything you can think of that you have to do. You're just like, okay, I have to study for this thing. Okay, I have to turn this in. I told so-and-so I would do this. In a couple weeks, I have to do this. In a couple weeks, I have to do this. I have to do this, I have to do this. And I just go through, write it on a sticky note, and jot it down. And I'm not writing anything on them right now. But you just write down tons of stuff you have to get done. I have to order this, I have to buy this, I have to do my Christmas shopping, I have to film a video, I have to edit a video, I have to pick a song, you know. You write down, you're brain dumping. You just write it on here, stick them on here. This in itself is really helpful because what I found that I normally realize is what seems like I have 100 things going on in my head is actually only like 10. I've worked with some people who like this step, or some people like to skip this step. Okay, but I'll just include it in case you're one of these people. So then what some people like to do is they like to prioritize them. So they'll go on a scale of 1 to 10. Can we see that at all? On a scale of 1 to 10, then you figure out how important each of them is to you. So then I go through and sequence them. So I might say, okay, I need to edit a video. That's priority 10. I need to get batteries for my clock. That's like priority 1. And then I go through and I just kind of sort them, and I've got their priorities, and I'm sorting them into how important each of them is to me. And the fact that they're sticky notes just makes it nice, and you can move them around. So let's go ahead and sort them on a scale of 1 to 10, how important each of them is to me. Then once I've done that, I go ahead and sort them into time. The time frame depends on how far you go out. So like in an example of wedding planning, your to-do list might be like 3 months long, or most of the things are probably a couple weeks out, but then there are some things that are 3 months out. So it'd be like that. Whereas if it's like finals week and you're at crunch time, this might only be like a week long. So whatever time frame makes sense to you. Some people think further out, some people are thinking shorter out, depending on what kind of situation you're in right now. So then what I do is I just kind of make boxes for them. So let's say this is 3 months out. This is like a wedding planning sort of thing. I've got month 1, I just put a box. Month 2, put a box. In month 3, put a box. And I first start out by sorting them into what month they go in. Okay, editing a video, that's gotta happen now. A lot of the priority 10s are happening right away. This photo shoot I needed to do with so-and-so, that's not until a month out. This is here. And then I just go ahead and I sort them. Gotta call a caterer, gotta do this, and you just go through and you're sorting them. Most of the stuff is gonna fall into this month category, probably. And then from there, so then I've got month 1, so let's say this is December. I take December and I split it into the 4 weeks, and then I just plop them in there with what day they go on. Now, like I said, depending on what your time frame is, that might not make sense. Like if you're using the example of finals week, maybe you immediately are sorting them into weeks. You sort them into week 1, week 2, week 3, and then within that week you pick what day they go in, or maybe you're just immediately sorting them into days. I mean, whatever time frame makes sense for you. And then what I do is I grab my planner and I write down when I'm gonna do each thing, and I basically give myself due dates. I think people operate really well when they have due dates. And so then I go ahead and pick, okay, I'm gonna do this thing Monday at 3 o'clock, and I get it down to the time. Do this time, this is this time, this is this time, and I go through. And what it does is it sorts it all out, and it makes it seem a lot more manageable. So now instead of having 20 things all crammed in my head, I have 1 thing this week, 1 thing this week, 1 thing this week, and 1 thing this week. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, not so much of that is actually so urgent. Actually, it's just a lot of stuff taking up my mental energy, and now I can have a lot more clarity around that. But okay, so this is kind of the process that I do. I brain dump, and then I go ahead and put it in a planner. Now that process in and of itself is not enough, because this is just going to happen again. If you're the type of person that procrastinates and overschedules yourself, this is going to happen again, and you're going to have to do that exercise over and over and over again. Whereas I have scheduled my time to where I never do that anymore. I used to be very overwhelmed, and I would have maybe like work going and school going and this going. And now I have a job and kind of a side hustle, and I like volunteer places and do things, and I hang out with friends. But I've scheduled my time so that I don't get in this spot anymore, this spot of overwhelm. And that's where I want you to get. I don't think anyone should be overwhelmed. People shouldn't be overscheduled. People should know what they want to do, be intentional with their time, and focus on the things that matter to them. So if you find yourself having to do this exercise a lot, or if you find yourself getting overwhelmed a lot, you should look at the patterns and figure out, look at those sticky notes. What are some themes there? Are a lot of them family obligations? Are a lot of them friend obligations that you don't really want to do? Are they work? When we sorted them by priority on a scale of 1 to 10, that's kind of a sense of urgency, but you could also sort them on a scale of 1 to 10 for like which ones you enjoy the most and which ones light you up the most. And if there are some that are really not lighting you up, but they're taking a good chunk of your time, you should reevaluate that so that you don't get in this mess again. One pattern that I noticed for myself is a lot of the things that I would put down on sticky notes were undecideds. So I had said maybe to this person, I'd said maybe to this person, I'd said maybe to this person. So I had a lot of like needing to get back to them. Or I hadn't decided if I was gonna buy this thing, so I went on the website and then I put it off and wasn't decided, but now it's still on my list because I still need to do Christmas shopping. Those undecideds are open loops, and your brain cannot stand them. Anytime there's an open loop, it's still a to-do item. If you have not decided, this is what I'm doing and this is when I'm doing it, it's an open loop in your brain. So if you're kind of like, well, maybe I still haven't decided, that takes up a lot of mental energy. You need to just get it decided. Because when it's not decided, your brain's gonna keep thinking about it, and that's not efficient. You need to think about it once, one and done. As soon as it comes on your plate, you decide, pick a time, it's gone. So like I picked a time like in the past for Christmas shopping, for example. In the past, I have just like, oh, I think maybe I'll do this, I think maybe I'll do this. And I would string it out for like 3 weeks, just undecided. But basically when push comes to shove, I knew what I was gonna get them. I was just basically procrastinating, thinking maybe something better would come along. Nothing better comes along. I've got better things to do than be sitting thinking about Christmas presents like 3 times a day. Like, just get it done. So this year I like picked a time. This is what I'm getting. I decided, did it, one and done. So my Christmas shopping was done in like an hour. So when you can, structure your time to be proactive. I mean, that's best case scenario. Don't try, this is a reactive thing. This is like when you're on the defensive, you fell behind, you have to do this activity, but you shouldn't have to be doing it all the time. So most of the time you try to be proactive, but you know what, it happens sometimes. You get overwhelmed, you get stressed. But what's important is that whenever you feel a particularly negative emotion, and positive emotions, but especially when you feel a negative emotion, you got to learn from it so that you're not dealing with it over and over and over again. So if you feel this feeling of stress and overwhelm and you don't want to feel it this way again, you have to become a student of yourself and study yourself and figure out what the heck is causing this stress and overwhelm, and then get rid of it. You know, like if you're a student and you procrastinate a lot, is the reason because you don't like your major? And if you don't like your major, what the heck are you doing spending all the money doing that for? It's really important to study yourself, be a student of yourself, so that you can get better and have a life that you like more. Because if you don't really pay attention to why you're doing the things that you're doing, you're just going to keep making these decisions, and when you're not intentional with it, you're not going to have an intentional life, and you will just be the byproduct of everyone else's expectations. When you study other people and what other people want, you're constantly doing what other people want you to do, you live a life they would like. But if you do not study yourself and figure out what you like, then you're not going to have a life that you love. I mean, that's kind of what's at stake here. So when you do something like this, it just makes it seem so much more simple. It takes all that chaos that's in your brain and it just kind of straightens it out. And you have the capacity to do this beforehand, preemptively. You don't have to always wait till you're on the defensive to do this. You can have a clear mind. Like, my mind is so clear right now. I know exactly what I need to do. I do not have these things pinging at me. Like, I used to be the type of person that would just leave texts unread so that next time I got on my phone, I would see them. But what happened, really what that means was I saw a text, they said, hey, do you want to hang out? I didn't decide. So I'm like, I'm not sure if I really want to. So I wouldn't decide, so I would just leave it. So my text stays unread. So then I'm going about my day. Next time I go off, I'm like, oh shoot, I need to respond to this person. And then like 5 days would go by, and then it had been so long that I was like, well, now it's been like too long, I think, but I don't know. So then I might respond to them days later. I was doing this like maybe in my early 20s. And then I finally respond to them, and then they would feel like unimportant, like, oh no, you don't really have to. And so not only did it would ping at me like 10 times before I actually did something about the text. But then now these people in my life were feeling unimportant. So I just had to straighten it out. As soon as I see a text, you see something, one and done. You only want to touch it once. You see that text, you do it once. Like, the decision doesn't get any easier when you procrastinate the decision. Undecidedness sucks. It's such a bad open loop, and it just ruins your peace of mind. And it sucks to feel anxious. It sucks to have a chaotic mind. You can only go on like that for so long before you get to the point of like breakdown. Your brain can only handle so much stress, so much anxiety. People talk about panic attacks or they're having stomach aches, and I know that we live in a very chaotic, distracted world, but we can do our very best to be intentional and put the blinders on to all of the advertisements and the apps and all the communication. Like, you can put your blinders on, figure out what you want to do and do it. I think it's probably harder than it ever has been, but you can find peace and peace of mind. I mean, like I said, my mind is so clear right now. Like, I've made the decisions that I need to make. When you have a clear mind, that opens you up for creativity. I could never be creative in the modes where everything felt so chaotic, when the place around me is messy and my mind is messy and my to-do list is so long and it's running and it's just like this big knotted up yarn ball. Like, it doesn't give a space for creativity. But if you can have a clear mind and you can feel at peace, then it creates a house. It like houses your creativity. It gives a place for creativity to live and for good relationships to live. But you know, when you're running ragged and really chaotic, that really comes off in your communication with other people and in your relationships and how your career's going. So it's just so important to really figure out what's important to you and do those things. Like, were you so overwhelmed because you overscheduled yourself? Like, why do you overschedule yourself? Like, who are you trying to prove that to? Are all the things legitimately fun? Can you hire this stuff out? Like, 20% of what we do makes 80% of the difference. So of those sticky notes, probably 20% of them are important and the other 80% you can throw away. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, you know what I mean? If you want to be an obligation hoarder, by all means do it. But I would rather be an obligation minimalist, and I would really like to be intentional with my time, to have a good quality of time, that I'm not just spending my time everywhere. But I make that 20% meaningful, and I put my whole focus into it. And I want to be able to put my whole focus and mind into it, and you can't do that if you're living in chaos. So yeah, that's the exercise that I've done. If you're feeling overwhelmed, give it a try. Let me know if it helps straighten out your thoughts. Yeah, basically just do a brain dump, sort them by priority, and then sort them by time. And just make the decision what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. Don't leave any open loops, because your brain will ping it back to you if you haven't decided if it's an open loop. So make sure you get all those decisions made. That's normally the biggest thing. Yeah, so I do coaching. I have coached a couple people using this exercise. Like, if you just feel like you're chaotic and you would like to do this exercise, like if you want me to just like help you through it and just get your life sorted out for a sec, like I would love to help you do that. I have coaching. It's linked in the description. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of this. Bye.